both guys will sense the energy of the handshake. You'll notice both guys will kind of sink their hips and widen their base, and they wind up to drive the handshake. And then you kind of lock it.
If you squeeze early, you're always going to win.
Well, and then you kind of look at each other and you're like, hell yeah, this is a guy that I want to drink a beer with and watch a football game with. That guy just got into a linebacker stance to shake my freaking hand. Remember we ran into that guy at Chicks, the Rhode Island guy, the linebacker? That's what he did. He was like, nice to meet you. My name is Bill, University of Rhode Island. Linebacker. I was like, Bill, was that 40 years ago? That's part of your identity
Holy
still?
Shit, I forgot about that. That was good.
And then I came back with Yale University, linebacker, class of 2010. You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. How we doing, Tone?
Morning, Bear. Doing good.
We got the big Q&A episode this morning.
I know, we haven't done one in a while.
You ready?
Let's do it.
Did you get it in this morning?
Yeah. Speed upper. So some speed bench and then some accessory, both chest and back. So good little Friday pump.
Good. I know this might make me old-fashioned. I know we talk about all this biohacking and cold plunge and sauna and natural sunlight and sleep regimens. It's like, dude, sometimes you just need a little 5x5 bench press and a live Skinner album. That's all we need, man, right? Followed up by a ribeye and some chocolate milk.
Hell yeah. Did you do that at the house?
No, that was at the gym.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Where'd you get a ribeye?
What? It's the Primal Beef Company. Remember Sean Glass?
Oh,
he came in here?
Nice.
Yeah. I started ordering from him. It's Shenandoah Valley, so all the grass-fed stuff. So
I might have to.
Sometimes you got to simplify things, man. Not that I'm against any of the biohacking, but get back to the basics. Ribeye steaks and 5x5 bench.
Ribeye's my favorite. It literally, if that's my death sentence. If I'm ever on death row, it's a ribeye with mashed potatoes.
All right, sorry, I got us sidetracked 2 seconds into the episode. All right, well, we got some Q&As today. We appreciate everyone who submitted some questions on Instagram. So I'm giving Tony the floor here. He's going to drive, and I'm going to do my best not to say something stupid. So go ahead, Tony, and try to keep me in check.
All right. Well, let's start with you and I, and it actually relates to the whole kind of like performance or improvement. I think we do a great job of both calling ourselves out for what we're not doing great, as also is trying to look for ways to improve, both through the guests we have on and just you and I as we explore some one-on-one conversations. So where I want to start is a little bit opposite of that I feel like we don't probably do a great job of doing, and that's kind of maybe calling out some of the wins that we've had. So you'll see where I'm going with this. The question that was submitted is, what is something you are proud of from this year?
I think if we're talking BP, first thing that comes to mind is probably our Normandy campaign for the 80th. So I think most are probably tracking, but quick version was we made a limited edition D-Day shoe for the 80th. A bunch of the proceeds went to Best Defense Foundation, who took 60 World War II veterans back for the 80th. Another $25,000 to Ed Byers' charity that he started. So a good financial contribution of us kind of putting our money where our mouth is. But more importantly, particularly when it's about like memorials and things like that, you have to be very careful how you honor a moment, because I see a lot of brands that I don't think do it the right way, and it's very clear it's just a money grab. And particularly with me being a veteran, like we need to be very careful to not cross that line. That being said, you can absolutely leverage your platform to do a lot of good. So you shouldn't, be afraid to do things like that, because like everyone can win in that scenario. But I think what we learned as a brand is, in such a crowded space like fitness apparel, like we're idiots for being in this space, Tony. It is so crowded. There's no barrier to entry. As it gets harder and harder to advertise on social media because it gets more expensive, the margin for error on winning is so much more difficult. So your actual value proposition to your customers isn't actually good apparel. I would call that like an implied task. Like you better have good apparel, because that's a minimum standard. But a lot of brands have good apparel and they have cool designs. And all right, so what is it beyond that? That is the actual value proposition that you're offering. What is your secret sauce? And for us, that's the brand. That's the ethos and the values that are associated with what it is to be born primitive and what we stand for. That is the moat around our castle, right? If we don't have that, we're nothing. You and I could start a legging company tomorrow if we wanted to, easily, right? Rename it, and it's Born Primitive in disguise, but it wouldn't have the identity that we've been building over the last 10 plus years. And I think that campaign validated that you have to do more, right? It has to mean more. And it fired up our customers. We were able to go over there with those veterans and be a part of it, be a part of all the ceremonies, go to the cemetery. This wasn't just like a fancy campaign for us. This was a real significant event, with the ties from our brand back to military service and our appreciation for all who serve. And I think the team got to really see that come alive, here at Born Primitive, and everyone got behind it. And I feel like everyone was just rowing in the same direction. But to see it kind of explode like it did, like I was kind of unsure, because a lot of times like these ideas, I'm like, well, I think it's cool, but like I'm kind of an idiot sometimes. So maybe maybe I'm like one of those things, a lot of things that I think are cool are not cool at all, right? So I was a little bit, not concerned, but a little bit worried that, okay, maybe this won't be as big as I think it was, but it was like 10x what I thought it was going to be. And I think that sets a template for moving forward. We'll have another campaign on November 1st that I think will beat this one, and will be unique in that same way. And to me, that is how we win, Tony. Of course, we need to make good product, and it needs to fit well and be stylish and all these other things and function and everything we talk about on the product side. But there has to be more than that, man, or we won't survive. No one will.
Yeah, I think a couple of things I want to call out that you said there. I think the first one that's so important, and we see this firsthand because we're part of all the campaign planning, the project management side of like bringing these moments to life. And what you said is something I'm very proud as a team that I've seen become more and more at the forefront of that conversation is like, how is this a genuine moment versus what you said, kind of just like a smokescreen to like drive awareness to your brand. Now, as you said too, I think we'd be disingenuous to say that like, hey, we as a brand do benefit from these moments, but if there isn't a genuine kind of thread within the campaign you're running, people are going to sniff that out. And especially nowadays, because people's exposure to just information on the internet is so high compared to where it was 20 years ago that you're not going to pull the wool over people's eyes and just be doing things just to drive awareness towards your brand. But as you said, it can be a win for everyone. And I've seen that's something I'm proud of too regarding this moment, is that I'm seeing even our director of marketing, Claire, and Leah, who's kind of the project manager on all these huge things, like I'm seeing them kind of come up with ideas of like, oh, here's how we can add more value to both the veterans, or here's how we can make this more genuine so that we don't ever as a brand become that one, as you said, that's just pumping stuff just to pump like or for their own benefit. So really proud there. And then, yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see some of the metrics surrounding, like it truly is a great study on just delivering both a genuine message, but then a full 360 kind of running a full 360 campaign. I mean, you remember some of the metrics surrounding like social engagement on these was insane. So there's where like you did an incredible job of just timing. And of course you're going to miss sometimes, but like the timing on this and the virality of it was just insane. Like it truly was a perfect storm. Both just like what was being talked about and kind of the overall zeitgeist of social media and just culture as a whole, but then us and you were the driver behind this, getting very specific on the details to go into the campaign so that there was truly no stone left unturned. Like it really was a thorough campaign. And you see like how that resonates versus even releasing a new collection or something. There's no comparison at all. And then I think the only other thing I want to call out is like, and you and I have kind of sparred on this a lot, not sparred, but just maybe view it a little different. I think everything you say about like product being implied is true, but I think the little italics I would put there is that once you've built a base and you've become we're at a size now, like we have exit velocity, meaning like we're not in that startup stage. Like we have a strong base. Now, does that mean we can just sit on our laurels? No. But I think something within there I want to call out regarding product is that if you can take your product from good to great, we have the resources now to do that. So when you're in the beginning stages, you're right, anybody can start a clothing brand. But then once you've established yourself, to continue to kind of innovate and take your product from being in good, which I would put 90% of companies in, to great, I think only further separates alongside, of course, the campaigns and stuff.
Totally. Yeah, and we've seen that with the Savage One.
For sure.
Absolutely crushed because we got it right. The Salt Pant, out of control. The new Frontier 2.0, out of control. So yes, having elite product, it gives you a huge cushion on all the other things because people there's a viral then component, a viral coefficient to that just the product alone. So now you have all these products become actually little marketing drivers for you, And then when combined with cool brand moments, where they not only love the product, but are like, well, hell yeah, I love what these people stand for. I'm proud to wear the logo, or if it's a brand tee, across my chest, like at the gym, and say, yeah, this is how I roll. You have a good idea of the type of man or woman I am based on what I'm wearing, because we've projected those values. And I think that's when it becomes, things can really get ripping.
Okay, so the next one that was, or it wasn't the next one submitted, just another one we started that we'd love to get into, actually relates to that, and it's kind of maybe the shadow of us being willing to put ourselves out, especially yourself, with moments like the D-Day campaign, or even some things we have coming down the pipeline for Veterans Day. So this question, you'll see how it relates to what we just discussed, is being a brand that stands against the grain. What's your biggest challenge?
I think my biggest challenge is just on a personal level. We have become a little bit outspoken over the last couple years, but particularly probably in the last year or so. And I wrestle with, on a personal level, of how much of my own personal beliefs do I need to keep in check and separate from what we project through the brand. Because ultimately I have a responsibility to all of our employees. And I don't want to take advantage of having a platform through the brand just to project my own personal values. So that's one side of kind of my brain. And then on the other end of the spectrum, which is where I ultimately land, is when I look at other companies, especially the big corporations, when I look at our politicians, when I look at the media, I see that there is a common sense majority viewpoint in our society that is not adequately represented. And it creates this false perception that the prevailing public opinion is just some far left extreme viewpoint that is going to become mainstream if we don't speak up against just some of the absolute fucking insanity that we're seeing right now. Now that I'm a father, I care way more. Before I definitely had my opinions, but I was like, you know what? I don't care what rules you make, how much you make me pay tax, because I'm going to win regardless of the rules to the game. It was a little arrogant, but it was like, I don't do what you want. I'm going to outwork anyone anyway. So I'm still going to be at the top. Right. So, I just wasn't as vocal, and I was a little bit more fearful in the early stages of the brand of we got to be careful what we say because we might get canceled. And it was in that whole cancel everyone. You misspeak once and burn your place to the ground. And finally I was like, fuck this. Who am I as a man if I don't have the balls to speak out against things that are completely fucking insane? Because guess what? My daughter is going to inherit that insanity, right? So what happens when our daughters are 25 years old and they ask us, hey, when did this all start? Oh, it was when I was a grown-ass man with a platform with hundreds of thousands of customers that were active. And what did you do about it? Oh, I was too afraid to lose money, so I didn't say shit, and now here we are. That's something that could actually happen, right? Now it's an obligation, man. And also, I think common sense, everyday people, they want their voices represented through mediums they don't typically see them in. You look at the Apples, the Googles, the Metas. They've completely gone one direction. We talked about the Google censorship, the Meta censorship. They've completely, for whatever reason, I don't know the actual reason, because I truly don't think the board members at these companies believe these things. But for whatever reason, they're doing it. The media is completely corrupt. You're seeing this with our current campaign right now. We're all trying to get brainwashed into believing that someone that was the most disliked vice president in history with the lowest approval rating is all of a sudden the messiah that's going to save us all, even though she's currently in office, right? So, yeah, are we putting ourselves out there a little bit more as a brand? You're goddamn right we are. And there's going to be more of that because I'm sick of it. I'm not going to grow up in a world where some sixth grade boy can the next day decide he's a girl and go share a bathroom with my daughter. There's no fucking way that's going to happen. And if you think that, the people who are against that are bigots, you've completely taken the bait on the bullshit the media has fed you. And you have such a case of confirmation bias, you should just be out of the count because you're never going to come around. If you think me saying that is fringe or extreme, holy shit, how far have we come since, common sense was a thing? You know what I mean? Just think in 20 years, how much of a change it is. So went a little long on that. What I'm getting at is, hey man, if there's 160 million people in this country that don't like the fact that we support veterans and first responders, and the fact that we promote common sense values here, and that there are no entitlements. There's no handouts. Every person has a shot, but guess what? You got to get out there and work your fucking butt off, right? It's this, oh, poor me, I'm a victim. Everyone thinks they're a fucking victim right now. And it's like, what are you actually doing about it? What are you doing to improve your position, to actually offer something of value as an employee, as a parent, as a civilian? What are you actually doing to offer something? And for a lot of these people, they're not doing anything to improve their position, yet they feel like they're entitled to something. And then there's one side that just encourages that because they want them to vote for them. And they become little victims that are dependent on mommy. And then we see that every 4 years in an election, right? Where the rest of us, just kind of common sense people that just want the government to stay the hell out of our way, are like, is this really what we're becoming? You know what I mean? So we will be that cut against the grain. And a lot of people aren't going to like it, Tony. We know that. But at this point, we're okay with that. Because guess what? In a weird way, that's how we win. That's how we distinguish ourselves. Look at what Black Rifle Coffee did, man. That case study should be used. Every Harvard MBA smart guy should be getting that case study for 2 weeks at Harvard, right? That how did a dude who, like an active duty guy, brewing coffee on a deployment in Afghanistan, build a $1 billion enterprise? Well, guess what? He was willing to speak to a giant group of people in our country that weren't getting represented in the coffee space, right? Starbucks, all these, they're great. It's great product, but the values that they were kind of, standing for didn't align with a lot of people. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I in a way, they have a right to do that. So I appreciate the game. But Black Rifle Coffee represented or identified a lane that they could run in that was just so. I'm not trying to compare ourselves to them because they're definitely a few weight classes above us, but I think there are similar themes that we can extract from this, and that will be the reason we're going to become a $1 billion company. I guarantee it. That's going to happen. No one is stopping us, and no one can cancel us because there's enough common sense folks that say, fuck yeah. That's why I wear a Born Primitive shirt, because that guy does not give a shit. They don't give a shit. They stand up for strong American values, and they're not going to apologize for it, right?
It's pretty wild to look back. I mean, even think you've been doing this for 10 to 11 years. I mean, 10 years, I know even you guys were working on it before there. So we'll stick at 10 though. I've been here almost 6 years now. And to see the evolution of, we weren't controversial when I first came here. Now would I put us in some buckets of like being just the overtly controversial? No, but like starting it kind of when the defund the police and then into COVID, it is wild to see how something that it was in no way, it was actually, I would say, a value that was probably encouraged and kind of looked up to as far as like supporting those who serve, having kind of a patriotic edge, to all of a sudden that shifted so quickly. So it is even kind of bringing it back to the question of like, what was the biggest challenge? It was like, it's not as if you founded this brand to be controversial. I would say you will always cut against the grain, both individually and then as a brand. But then to see how at year 5, it was like you and we had to make a decision. And to see now how that is even involved to present day is pretty wild. Just as far as like now now we do sit in a position where we almost have gotten labeled at times as being kind of like, what people would say on one side of the spectrum. So yeah, really, really interesting evolution to see. And I think I've seen you kind of find your voice on it, just as far as like, hey, I'm not going to be the guy that's claiming to have all the answers. And actually a note I took here, and I would love like you and I to challenge ourselves to do this more often, is why I enjoy this podcast is that as much as you probably have more passion surrounding these issues, I love to talk about them. You have more just like, I think, emotion and passion surrounding it. Is that never are you unwilling to have a conversation with somebody who differs in opinion. And that's actually the challenge I wrote down, is that, and you and I have talked about this before, is I would love to get more people who are still sensible, meaning like they're not going to come on here and just like try to rattle and instantly get emotional, and we're going to have a shitty back and forth. I would love to have a more like robust, varying opinion on here and have those discussions, because that's what I've appreciated about you, is that regardless of how passionate you are behind it, you're not afraid to have, and even Steelman, the opposite's argument. But it's something we're lacking in culture today. And we even, I mean, how refreshing was it? We had Lucy Bartholomew, who's an ultra athlete, and she even talked about like, hey, I eat a plant-based diet, but I spent a lot of time researching the benefits of a carnivore diet only because as a thought exercise, it was important for me not to think that I was doing something better than other people. So just a long-winded way to say, like, I've watched you and then us as a brand have to navigate kind of cutting against the grain. And it's been a wild evolution just because of culturally how crazy things have gotten.
Yeah, and I think another kind of thing that makes me a little bit hesitant is that I don't want to become guilty of what I'm accusing the other side of as this divisive narrative. And I'm like, well, shoot, am I making it worse by then throwing my opinion on the table and then getting people fired up? But where I ultimately side as like, our viewpoint is not getting represented, and I'm not going to allow this to be a fucking one-sided fight, right? And if you're going to try to gaslight me into saying that because I don't want a boy to share a bathroom with my daughter because he decided he's a freaking girl that day, and if I go to the, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not, that doesn't make me some extremist. That makes me a common sense fucking person. And maybe you live in LA and you're in Hollywood and that's like a prevailing thing. But hey, in middle America and everywhere else, no one actually fucking wants that. So even though CNN's pushing it and MSNBC and all these freaking celebrities, that's not mainstream narrative. So if, you know, for anyone listening, if you align with what I'm saying, we all need to be more vocal. It's not just like a brand play. I think it's a fucking obligation, especially us men, like fellas, man the fuck up and stop like being apathetic to all this shit, right? Because it might be too late at some point, and you're gonna say the country that we love so much that was that beacon on a hill, it's fucking gone. And we could put our tinfoil hats on. I genuinely don't think the people that are pushing this at the top actually believe it. They're doing it, and to me, it's all about follow the money, Tony. We talk about big pharma. We talk about the industrial military complex and all these things that there's all these inexplicable things that continue to happen. And you're like, these people that are doing this are actually really smart people, and they're accomplished. And yes, we have different viewpoints, but there's no way through rational thought they landed on these decisions. So what is the real end game? You know what I mean? There's no way on day one in office, Joe Biden enacted an executive order that opened the floodgates to millions of immigrants to come across the border, where he was just like, you know what? That seems like a smart thing to do. He knows it's not smart. So what is the real reason he's doing that? Well, all of a sudden we're now being told that voter IDs to vote are racist. So do you see where we're going with this? Now there's going to be 15 million people in the country, 95% of which are going to vote Democrat because they're going to get all the free shit. And now every federal election in perpetuity is now won. Other than Ronald Reagan when he won 49 of 50 states, no Republican would have ever won an election with that many people that have just now joined our country that are now voting Democrat. And I don't blame them, because they're going to give them, they already are giving them free health care, a freaking room at the Roosevelt, a fucking cell phone, all these other things, right? Do you see this FEMA thing that just came out? As we're recording this, North Carolina thing's a total shit show. FEMA just came out and said we might run out of money. And guess what? You know what they've given over the last 2 years for illegal immigration? $1 billion fucking dollars. And they're just giving these people in North Carolina $750 a day. And the guy, Mayorkas, just came out and said we might run out of funding if there's another hurricane for FEMA. Yet we've just spent $1 billion of that budget on illegal immigrants. Oh, we need to do welcome centers, and we need to do this. And hey, here's your room at the Roosevelt. Here's your phone. Here's your $2,500 debit card, right? So rational thought would never lead people to make these decisions. So what is the real fucking reason? You see what I'm saying? So yeah, am I going to stand up against that because I sniffed that bullshit out a mile away? Absolutely. Does that make me a bad person? No. Hopefully, I'm one of people that will help people starting to wake up to what they're seeing. And this doesn't need to be political, because guess what? Republicans and Democrats were all getting fucking played by the people at the top, right? That's my opinion. I can't obviously prove it, but wait until legislation comes out when it's proposed that, okay, we made a mistake with immigration. Let's just give everyone a clean slate. If you're in the country, we're just going to give you citizenship. And then, all right, cool, let's build the wall. It's like, okay, well, every election in perpetuity is now changed forever because exactly what you did over a 3.5-4 year period. on purpose, so deliberate. And now they're gaslighting us and saying, oh, it is an issue. Build a wall. You know what I mean? Oh, 34 days before the election, you're telling us that now? And you did your first visit down there for a photo op, right? So, yeah, do I get fired up because I care about our country and I'm not just going to sit on my hands and let these freaking beta males push us around? It's not going to fucking happen.
Yeah, well, I'm going to cool you off after that one.
Yeah. Hey, you drop that.
I know,
yeah.
I know, and I could keep it going.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna
That's
shift
probably
us.
a good thing.
We'll be back on some topics that I think will get the fieriness back out. But I'm gonna throw you in the cold plunge right now.
Well, the problem is too. I just worked out. I always work out right before these episodes, so I'm still running on the pre-workout. But hey, that's me, man. That's unfiltered. There are no mysteries where I roll with this stuff, man.
And I think people appreciate that. So let's so the next one I want to go a little more personal. And this is something you've been open about in prior episodes, and I think you'll feel comfortable answering. But what has been the biggest challenge and the biggest blessing of being a single father?
Well, biggest challenge, just purely from a logistic standpoint, is when there's only one of you. Everything's on you, man. Right? When you're trying to run a company with 75 people, stay in shape, have some downtime for yourself, which is pretty much impossible at this point. There's no cavalry coming to rescue. Now, I'm very lucky. My parents live here. I have my brother lives here. It's not like I'm running completely solo. I have a great support system. But that's only so often, right? When you get home from work and you're totally smoked. And so I go straight from here to get her at daycare. So I get like 20 minutes in the car to kind of like unwind. And, sometimes our days are stressful, right? We're dealing with problems and this and that. But sometimes I schedule calls at 5 when I'm driving. So I can just knock out, it's like 25 more minutes I can be productive, right? I'm trying to max out my day. So then I'll hang up the phone. I'll pick her up like as I'm in the parking lot and I go straight home. And now it's dad mode until 9:30 at night. And now I usually just fall asleep with her because it's not even worth it to, you know what I mean? So when you look at my day, it's like from, I get up around 6. Sometimes she'll wake up around 7. That's usually the only quiet time that you get at all. So I guess it's challenging. And any parent, not even just the single parents, know the challenge I'm talking about, but particularly the single ones that are doing it by themselves. You can feel a little bit overwhelmed and almost like if you're not careful, you can feel a little bit like, I don't want to say resentment, but like, man, like, am I ever going to get a moment to myself where I can just, you have this little human dependent on you. But I'll flip it over now because that's, the more negative side. It has forced me to be all in as a dad because there's no other choice. And that has completely changed who I am and what my priorities are. And it's crystal clear to me now what the priorities in my life are. And it's super refreshing to have that clarity. And as you know, like before you're a parent, you have no idea the joy that it can bring and just it's crazy. It's like every day you're just grateful. So when I put her, she just sleeps with me. So when we go to bed every night, she's laying there and she has to she's attached to me like all night. I'm just laying there staring at the ceiling like, man, how lucky am I to have this? Like, this is something I knew nothing about a few years ago. And now I'm like, so it's hard. It's exhausting. It's stressful at times. Your old life is fucking gone. You know that. There's little glimmers of it every now and then. If you take a quick work trip, you know what I mean? And you can get dinner and you're not like, we connect with some old friends. You kind of feel normal for like for a 2-hour window. But then you're back in it. So I think it's made me grow up a little bit and it just has changed my priorities. And like I said, not to weave it back to the last question, but my outlook on what is my role in society now is different because now it's like, all right, it's kind of on me to make sure that she is set up for the rest of her life, right? So when I need, on a personal level, I need to teach her those values, but what is she going to inherit, right? Not just financially, but I'm talking more like, what world is she going to grow up in? So that's why I think it kind of kicked me in the ass to say, all right, hey man, you've been a leader your whole life. You know what I mean? You've always been the captain of the football team and this and that. You've gravitated towards that. You're leading a company. Why on the most important topic, that of your whole life are you all of a sudden like, sitting in the back seat and letting everyone else run the show, right? And I think that's part of why you might sense how kind of fired up and passionate I am about making sure that we don't go down the wrong path as a country because I think as fathers and parents, we have an obligation to be stewards of the future for our children. And we have different opinions on what that future might be. But I think there's a lot of common sense values in the middle that like all of us should align with and stop getting played. But I'm loving it, man. It's a lot of work. There's good days and bad days, you know.
Do you feel like you've been able to, because something I wrestle with all the time, or not even wrestle with, it's just an exercise for myself, is I call it like season sinking. And what I mean by that is like, yeah, I know it's my nature to solve my way out of everything. Meaning like if I'm not getting the exact amount of time I want to work out, like, okay, how can I optimize my workout better? How can I sleep more? How can I eat better? Like all these things constantly trying to solve. And what I've realized is that within this season of life, and that's where like the phrase comes from, is that sometimes sinking into it, while still, that doesn't mean either. That doesn't mean like, oh, I'm busy, so I don't work out anymore. Or I don't eat well anymore. But it's like laxing just slightly and observing and giving yourself some like flexibility and kind of just like peace to be like, hey, don't that little voice in your head that's constantly wanting to optimize, be able to turn that on and off. Because if you don't, you're never actually like enjoying anything, because it's like you're constantly trying to level up everything. And that's something, having children, and we have our third on the way in a couple weeks, it teaches you very quickly. Because as you said, there's just there's a baseline of chaos, and I don't even mean that as a negative, just like of just every minute of my day, I know where I'm going to be. There's not a single second of my day where I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So as you said, it's so easy. If you start to try to optimize your way out of that, or if you're looking at like, oh, 2 years ago, I was in this good a shape, eating this way, it's like, you're going to start to resent your current reality. So like for me, being able to sink into that has been an exercise that I've really been trying to work on. And it's like meditating. It's like you never actually really achieve anything, but it's an exercise to keep like just bringing your awareness back to like just a different perspective on life. So long-winded way to ask you, have you felt, now that you have kind of 3.5 years under your belt as a father, have you felt yourself being able to sink in a little more and kind of flow with the chaos?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Is I look at it as like, all right, you are at best now running at 80% of the old you before you were a father. Now there's this whole new world where it's like unbelievable, and it's absolutely worth conceding 20% of your optimal.
Yep.
But one of those is at the gym, right? Like I can't go to the gym for 2 hours anymore on a Saturday and just be like, all right, I have no obligations. I'm just gonna caffeinate extra and do all the accessory work and the long warm up, and those days are over. Sometimes it's 45 minutes, and with my warm up, I'm actually only working out for 20 minutes, right? And it's like lighter weight, and it's so yeah. That holds true for so many other aspects of your life, and I think you're spot on. You have to just accept it, because I think for a while I was mad at myself for not maintaining kind of that standard, and a lot of that is work towards BP. Like I really try not to work after I get home anymore. Now, sometimes if it's something important that I need to get out, I'll put her on the iPad for a minute and just, all right, I gotta get this email because I know it's time sensitive, and then when I have that hour in the morning, I'm usually doing emails and stuff. So it's not like I'm slacking. Whereas the old me, I mean, you probably know, like I was so motivated to kind of stand up this business that was nothing, that like I would work till midnight and it didn't bother me at all. That was me running optimal, even though probably wasn't sustainable. So when I'm not able to do that anymore, I feel like I'm almost like, hey, you lost the edge, man. Like you lost the eye of the tiger. You used to be up at midnight and then you're up at 5:30. You didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? And then you go hammer a workout, crush your soul, and you're right back in the seat doing it. And while you're active duty and traveling around the country, and now I'm like, man, I'm smoked and it's 6 p.m. You know what I mean? I just want to have a glass of wine and like color with my daughter. You know what I mean? Like, what has happened to you, man?
You can relate to this, like, because trust me, I do the same thing. And like even looking back when started as a fulfillment specialist and then was eventually managing, it's like, what I realize now, though, is that my ability to focus and manage my time is so much better that like even like I do my best too. And of course, there at least once or twice a week, I'm taking a call in the evening or something. Like there's something that's happening. But for the most part, as you said, I'm very disciplined about like, no, I'm shutting it off now, because what I realize is that during my day, then I'm managing my time in a way I was never doing before. And if you really get like, and here's where like I when people start telling me, especially individuals I manage or oversee, if I start to hear I don't have time, it actually usually means you don't know how to prioritize. Because when you get really good at prioritizing, if you have 8 hours in a day, I'm sorry, I'll sit down with you. You show me how you can't get done what you need to get done in 8 hours of a day. It's usually just a complete lack of prioritization. So that's what I realized very quickly is that, and I think you, like each person goes through it at some point, and you have to learn to just evolve, meaning like, yeah, quit looking in the rearview mirror, like the way things used to be. And it actually is for the better, as we said, if you can sink into it. And alongside of that, like keep developing your skill set so that if you have less time, you can focus more within that time period. So yeah, I think that's something you and I can definitely both relate on.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say is just like, and I think this is probably more prevalent with the moms, but it's a complete guess. But I think with a lot of parents, there's this guilt that if you fill your own cup, you're like, neglecting your child. And I think that's something I've reflected on is like, hey man, it's okay to kind of do some things for yourself occasionally. It's okay to take that Saturday night and go out with your buddies that you haven't seen in a long time, or take that quick trip. It's been hard for me to come around to that. And I know there's a lot of, especially like the single moms, like their lives, they just don't do anything for themselves anymore because they feel guilty. But I do think it is important to make sure you are trying to fill your cup occasionally, because eventually you're running out of stuff to pour out, man. And then I think that check engine light will come on, and then that'll show itself in other ways. But I'm still coming around to that. I'm working on it, but I'm at least conscious of it. And I think everyone wins. Your 3-year-old daughter is not going to remember when you took a long weekend. It's just for some trip when she's 21 years old. You know what I mean? Like, I think you need to put it in perspective. But in the moment, you're like, oh, she's going to be crying when I leave the house and this and that. And she's going to be, you know what I mean? It's like, all right, she's not going to remember this in a week. So, all right.
Okay, so let's, and I'm actually going to skip to one that I was going to do towards the end, but it kind of relates in the vein of us both having daughters. The question was, what are some standout qualities women should see and they put high value men, which I know there can be like some people that go over top with that whole kind of connotation and what that means. But I guess I'll reframe it for you. Like as a father now of a daughter, like when she's 24, when she's 25 and she's dating, what are the qualities now with you having 37 years under your belt that you want her to seek in a man? And I think it's good I know we do have some listeners that are in that age of like 16 to 23, and they're guys. So what traits do you think they should embody, and what traits would you hope that your daughter is kind of seeking in a man?
Well, correction, 36. Don't be putting that on me.
When are you in April? When's your birthday?
April, yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think when that time comes where there's some knucklehead walking through the door and I gotta,
you are this is like God. Bad Boys, or when they're at the door with the gun, like talking shit on them.
I hope the jorts. Well, for me, they'll always be a thing. I'm envisioning shirtless and jorts with hopefully weapons on the table, getting cleaned. I know that's very cliche, but I still think it's pretty solid. But I think society has at least attempted to demasculinize men, and I think that's the wrong direction we're going. I think for her, I would be seeking someone that could protect her. I think in men in their most natural state, we're protectors and providers. Not say if you're not some alpha male, you're a bad man, but I think we have an obligation to protect our family. That's our number one responsibility. We have another responsibility to provide for our families. Some diehard feminists might say, oh, that's a patriarchy and that's gender roles. The women, of course, can do that too. But I think at an instinctual level, those are two things that we're just hardwired to do, man. You look back through the evolution of humankind, right? That was always there. There were gender roles. And it's okay if there's deviation from there. But at its core, that is when we are at our best, is when we can protect and provide. And we're also conquerors, man. And there's flaws to that. Look at our history of wars and conquests. But in the new age, that is, men that have a passion to achieve something. So a lot of times that's in their profession, right? They want to go hunt. They want to climb the ladder because they feel like they're fulfilling their duty to their family to provide. So I think for me, it's finding someone that, if this is for like Ren's eventual man, someone who's driven and motivated, has the ability to protect her if something goes sideways. Obviously honesty, integrity, and someone that will dedicate his life to making her happy. Right. And because I think that becomes like a flywheel. If you're dedicated to making them happy because that fulfills you, and they're at the same time doing it in the other direction, that's like, it's infinite. You know what I mean? And that's the optimal arrangement, I think, in any relationship. You know what I mean? If you're trying to serve them at the same time they're trying to serve you, there's just an abundance of that. And so kind of long-winded, but hopefully I don't get some guy that walks in and gives me a limp-ass handshake and I got to break his hand and tell him, hey, man, look me in the eye when you shake your hand and don't ever shake my hand like that again. Because if he does, man,
that's a red flag.
Can you imagine?
I watched
if you got a 17-year-old daughter and he's coming over to take her to the homecoming dance and he gives you some limp ass handshake, right? Hey, what do you do for fun? Oh, I play video games. Do you got a job? No. Do you play any sports? No. Well, what do you like to do? I like to play video games. Like, what happens if that kid meets me? How does that go when she's upstairs getting ready? I'm saying, hey, listen. Go outside the door. We're going to try this again. You're going to walk in here. You're going to look at me in the eye like a freaking man, and you're going to drive that part of your hand into mine, and we're going to lock it in, and we're going to shake hands like freaking men, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That shit we're taught when we're little. Drive the thumb, man, right?
I was at a wedding a couple weeks ago, and I watched a guy who, and I wasn't close with either of them. Or if I was, I probably would have said something because that drives me crazy. He was holding his drink in his right hand, and an individual walked in. We're all the same age, so think like 30, somewhere in the 30s. And this guy, like, I shook the guy's hand. He was introducing himself like, hey, I'm friends with blah, blah. Like, good to meet you guys. Like, really happy to spend the weekend. This other guy turns, doesn't take the drink out of his right hand, overflops his left hand and shakes his hand like this. And the guy, I even saw in that guy's face, like, if I would have been him, I'd have been like, what did you just do to me? Like, I'd have felt like I just got assaulted. But I just, in my head, I was like, oh my God, like that is just a complete lack of, like, first off, just respect of, like, kind of half turned to him and went like this for somebody he didn't know. But yeah, in the vein of just idiocracy, like that I cannot believe that.
Well, it's funny when it goes the other way, when you have a couple alpha males that like are aligned, both guys will sense the energy of the handshake. And if you watch this, you'll notice both guys will kind of sink their hips and widen their base, and they wind up to drive the handshake. And then you kind of lock it.
If you squeeze early, you're always going to win.
Well, and then you kind of look at each other and you're like, hell yeah, this is a guy that I want to drink a beer with and watch a football game with. That guy just got into a linebacker stance to shake my freaking hand, right? That's what we need to be doing.
Yep.
I do the same thing.
Yep.
You remember we ran into that guy at Chicks, the Rhode Island guy, the linebacker?
Oh my
That's what he did. We were both locked up in a linebacker stance shaking hands.
He was like, he said linebacker, Rhode Island or something.
He was like, nice. This dude's like 60 years old. He goes, nice to meet you. My name is Bill. University of Rhode Island. Linebacker. I was like, Bill, was that 40 years ago? That's part of your identity
Holy
still.
Shit, I'd forgot about that. That was good.
And then I came back with Yale University, linebacker, class of 2010.
6'2", 240.
All right,
North Star High.
I got a sidetracked there. I'll take the blame for that one.
That was a good one. Yeah. Guys and ladies, have a good handshake.
Widen the stance, drive the thumb, look them in the eye, and say, nice to meet you. And then give them, if you played a football position, make sure you give them your football position like Big Bill did or whatever his name was.
Fucking Bill. Dude, that was funny. Or here, this is a good one. If you could start one thing earlier in life, then they put in parentheses, school, sport, job, investment, etc., what would it be?
I don't know, man. I feel like I kind of got rolling on all of those real early. Job, I started my own lawn mowing business when I was in like 6th grade. Investments, I was putting money in mutual funds pretty early because I learned about compound interest. Job, sports, playing everything since I was tiny. I think maybe one thing, this is not that cool, but I kind of wish I had taken on like a musical instrument. Like I'm trying to learn guitar right now. I feel like that would have been maybe something to balance me a little bit. but it was always, the sports, practice, running around the weight room. So there was never really time for that. But I went pretty hard in the paint, man. So I don't think I short stroked anything, but I would say that would be one thing that would have been nice to kind of make me a little more well-rounded, was maybe learn to play guitar when I was like, middle school or high school.
Yeah. I think my, my one call out there would be, I'm this, I'm a dork for like your breathing pattern and how you breathe even during exercise and stuff. And that's one you realize, like, to try to fix that when you're later in life, you can do it and you can make progress. But if you could even, and who the hell knows how an 8 or 10-year-old would even receive it. But as a parent, if you could find a way to make that fun of like teaching them to like breathe through their nose and even just meditation, like that is something, if you can learn at a young age, just to like, hey, every day we carve out 20 minutes to sit down and just like do our best to kind of like focus on our breath. I think that's something that would pay huge dividends later in life, because as you know, like being able to, like, we live in a culture, and this isn't a good or bad thing, but that we're so busy all the time. And that's both physically and mentally, that to be able to kind of like lower or like calm that state down at will. I've been around some people that are extremely skilled in it, and they just carry a very calm energy. So that is one that I hope to instill on my girls, because I'm very average at it. But even Elise she's really good at it as well. Just like she's done a lot of work on breathing and meditation. So that is one, just culturally, I think if more of us did at a younger age, there would be benefits on the back end.
Well, shit, send those pointers my way too, man.
Yep,
I could probably use some help too.
Yeah.
I'm big mouth breathing Neanderthal over here.
There's a lot of science coming out on that too. I always recommend, if you have not read the book Breathe by James Nestor, it's probably it's my second most gifted book, and then he was on Rogan. So if you're not a reader, just go listen to him on there. But I've watched that field over the last 5 years really, really expand, and I'm a nerd for that stuff. So I've seen the interest grow as well as the amount of information. So I think it'll be something that continues to evolve. Okay, here's a funny one that I laughed when I read it. If you could start a rumor about yourself, what would it be?
Lynn, you know the answer to that, man. Yeah. I know that's Lynn. Yeah. Come on now.
I know. I feel like we can't. Every guy, if you just listen to that, you know what your answer would be.
Well, that came up at the 3 men in the room. When that came up, we all started laughing about the exact same thing. So I'm gonna say no comment.
Yeah, no comment. But for the men, you know what the answer is. All right, so we have some that I know the last time we did a Q&A that we kind of called the speed round. Some of these are going to be in between, and then we'll get into some that are purely kind of speed round. So these are just ones I kind of started knowing that they would be a little less conversational and maybe just kind of direct answers, and we can kind of move through it at a bigger pace. So how can a friend best support a SEAL deployed in this current chaos?
That's an easy one. Support their family. SEALs deployed are in their element. That's where they want to be. That's where they belong. The best way to support any service member who's deployed is help make sure their family's taken care of. So if it's a man who's deployed, hey, ask if his lady needs any help around the house, mow the lawn, support the kids, whatever you got to do. If you're a girlfriend, hey, give her a break, watch the kids, let her go, do her nails. You know what I mean? When the hardest thing when you're deployed is for families when things that are at home are out of order because their spouse is taking on twice the burden they were. So that's the best thing you can do for any deployed service member, I think, is just to help out with their family. And a lot of those people, most of them aren't going to ask for help. So you're going to have to kind of go out of your way and be like, no, let me mow the lawn, or no, like, let me take the kids to the park so you can relax for 2 hours. And you know what I mean? So that's why I'd say that one.
Cool. Actually, this one might be a little broader, but I think it's worth us touching on. So it won't be a standard speed round one. But if you guys taught, and actually, let me read it, and then if you feel like we've touched on a ton of this today in the conversation, but if you guys taught a BP certification on how to live your life, what would be on it, in it?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway, we have touched on this, but I'll hit it quick, is just the acknowledgement that all the worthwhile things in your life are going to be difficult at one point. Like, look at anything you've accomplished in your life, even fatherhood, right? There's difficulties before you can kind of ascend to, that accomplishment. So we all need to acknowledge that hard work is a part of life. You're not a victim. You control your own destiny. That's why I get so fired up about this, man, because when you teach someone that you're a victim, or when you teach someone that they are a victim, it disarms them from actually being able to accomplish things, right? Because they get in their head that this is a predetermined outcome. So what's the point? I would use an analogy. It's like a parent who shows tough love and tells their kids what they need to hear, so they actually like get off their ass and start working, versus the parent that overly coddles them. And it's like, okay, in the moment, coddling them might give them comfort, but you're not setting them up for success later in their life. You need to teach them how to hunt, right? And you know, that kind of weaves into some of the other stuff I was saying earlier, but like so much of our society, our politicians are telling giant groups of people that they're a victim, that they can't make it, that this society is unfair and the deck stacked against them. And while, of course, we're all born into different situations, the fundamental belief that if you work hard and apply yourself, you can achieve success in this country is 100% true, right? You see all of these examples of that. And it's like, well, how did he make it? How did she make it? Was she just some crazy outlier? No. The formula is actually very fucking simple, but it starts with the acknowledgement that no one owes me shit. I need to go out there and work my butt off to achieve things. And I think we've lost that. And I just feel bad for these people that have been lied to take this victim bullshit bait, because now they're dependent on a giant political entity. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Do you think they actually want you guys to be, successful? No, because as soon as you become successful, you start thinking for yourself and you realize that this big lie you've been told is not true, and you start thinking for yourself. So I think that would be the biggest takeaway. If there's like one ethos, it's that you work your butt off. You acknowledge that life is hard and there's going to be things you have to go through to achieve things, but that's what makes the accomplishment worth it in the end. If you're just handed something, it doesn't mean anything, right? So of course, there's other values like decency and of course, I'm a bit spirited on this, but I'm also willing to, in a civil manner, speak with someone that has a different opinion than me, because that's a great opportunity to learn, because everyone has a different perspective for a reason. Like, it doesn't make them a bad person. That, you know, that maybe their parents raised them different, and maybe the source they get their information from is greatly different, so they have a different perspective from you, and that's okay. So I think there's, some civility, common courtesy, being a good neighbor, being a good citizen. I would hope those are all implied. But at the end of the day, if I think there's one personality that just defines like Born Primitive, it's, hey man, good old fashioned hard work, grit, work your butt off and get after it, and acknowledge that no one owes you shit. You got to go out and get it, and it's going to be hard. That's it.
And to take some of what you said, even just kind of a layer deeper, is like the stories we tell ourselves are so important. And I've talked a little bit about this on the podcast before. And what I mean by that is literally the stories that you run in your head, the same way there's a coding in a computer. If you really, and here's where things like meditation, you can actually, or for me, psychedelics, you can go in and start to actually look at like, what are my stories? And like, that's where you start to see like, oh, like here's where that insecurity I have or I hide from is because I have a weird story running in my head. Usually something that potentially happened as a kid. Whereas the opposite of that is like, oh, I'm confident in this area because I have a story running in my psyche that says I'm good at this. And then the same thing with you said, like what happens when you have a good story is you actually draw more of that towards you. What happens when you have a story that's either outdated or is centered around kind of fear or insecurity is you will embody that, and then you will reject the solution to it. And I bring that up because I think on a mass scale, I really do think there's coding happening on almost a mass consciousness scale. And what I mean by that is when you say things like the victim mentality, like I genuinely believe that, yes, that is something that like is almost being coded into the psyche of a mass amount of humans, because what does it do? It keeps them locked inside of that then. And you will not, as soon as you start to identify with something, you've built a prison around yourself. Now, the flip side of that, if you start to instill like kind of life affirming or confident level like thoughts or stories in your head, it can be the opposite. It can be an expansive thing that brings more things into your life, both from a relationship aspect, financial, or anything even within like the spiritual realm. But I think it's worth calling out, because I do think that's if you would spend a couple weeks here, a couple months here, you would realize that like the people here, like we have badass people here, Born Primitive. So like if there's any BP certification kind of program or framed within this question of like what would be in a BP certification program, like I think a level of just like freedom and reliance and resilience is definitely something that's just baked into the culture here.
Oh yeah.
Okay, here's one I had to ask you. I said, am I dumbass for not knowing this name? The question is Alan Jackson or Joe Diffie. Of course, I know who Alan Jackson is. I did not self-admittedly know who Joe Diffie was.
Well, Joe Diffie, R.I.P. But I think I got to go Alan Jackson on this one. But right. I love me some Diffie. Little John Deere green, little pickup man. Okay. Little prop me up beside the jukebox.
Yep. I have a strong aversion to certain country because we grew up in, as you know, as hillbillies, and I don't, for some reason, it's just like, and my dad wasn't into it, but okay. Updates on lifestyle shoe, and then the second part of the question is thoughts on Traverse jogger.
Okay. Lifestyle shoe, quick answer. It's in the works. We're excited about it. And then Traverse jogger, we actually just came out with our performance jogger, and it's freaking awesome. I think that this person probably isn't tracking. We have that. It's a little bit more high-end, premium, a little bit more expensive than our regular jogger, but it's freaking unreal. You're going to live in these things this fall. So whoever submitted that question, check out the performance jogger. We got it for men's and women. And you were a big behind that one, yep. Tony, so I got to give you credit for that one. It's our best jogger by far.
It's a great product.
Yeah.
I'll take this one. Can we make a 0 drop instead of 4 millimeter?
There you go.
So
that's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah,
what do you got, Tom?
This is something I've been, and I've probably talked about it at some point on here, but I've been wearing kind of 0 drop or barefoot shoes for almost a decade now. Outside of when I was playing, like when I was actually competing in baseball, of course I was wearing still normal cleats, but both working out and then just even lifestyle, I have a couple pair of 0 drops. So yeah, this is I've watched this grow exponentially as far as watching certain brands pop up, and then just the general cultural interest in kind of both the science and then just the practical application of why a 0 drop for some people is something they enjoy, and we have it in the works. So we had version 1, and I'll actually have one on now. What I will say,
this is prototype 1.
What I will say as I show this is actually the ones we didn't go with, but I had the other ones on, and they needed shipped out. We just hired a shoe engineer, and he's going to level up some of the design. But this is just to show you kind of the general layout. Like I said, this is the one we're not going with. But yeah, whoever submitted that, it's coming, and it's going to be badass, and I think it'll be at a price point that some of our competitors right now within the kind of 0 drop barefoot space, we can beat them both on quality and price. So be excited for that. It's something I'm passionate about, and I think yeah, that in the lineup of all the other stuff we have coming down the hopper with shoes is going to be a badass addition.
Yeah, and I'll tease that real quick. We got the Patriot 1 coming. That's an assault boot, but you could also hiking boot too. But we're building that for our military and law enforcement as part of BP Tactical, but absolutely an outdoor fit. We have a running shoe coming out. Super excited about that. It uses like a nitrogen infused outsole. It's the new hotness, and the shoe engineers on that are next level. We'll have that lifestyle shoe. Think kind of like, skateboarding type, Vans, Nike skateboarding kind of hybrid that we're really excited on. And then, yeah, Tony's working this barefoot shoe that there's a huge market for that. We obviously realize like people have different training styles and different footwear, kind of choices and needs. So we're expanding quickly now that the Savage 1 has been so crazy. And I know there was a question about the Savage 2. Right now, we don't have a immediate intent to create a Savage 2 because I saw this done the wrong way, particularly with Reebok when they were launching, and even Nike, like they're launching the Nano and the Metcon every year. I feel like they would have a great product, and then the next one would stink. So it's like we really like the Savage 1. There's no reason right now to make a Savage 2 because I feel like we would be changing it just to change it. But now we're going to continue to get feedback from our consumers, and we have additional shoe engineers on the team now. We're absolutely going to kind of arm them with, hey, if we did make a Savage 2, what would it be? And entertain it. But we're not like, oh, we need to have a Savage 2 out by fall of 25, or we're going to get like, it won't be cool, or, I don't feel like you need a new shoe style every year for the same product. I actually think that would be so frustrating and stressful and meeting the timeline. And so no Savage 2 for now, but be on the lookout. Never say never. But all these other ones coming out, I mean, we'll show them eventually when we start doing more reveals, and we are really excited about it.
Who wins in hunt and seek, Bear versus Matt? And I think Matt is your brother, if I had to guess, and it says best out of 3.
Well, they didn't provide time frame, so if it was high school, I think I got to give Matt the edge. By the way, this is a football drill. There's 3 holes. They got the tackling dummies on the ground, and the linebacker scrapes lateral, and then the running back is told the hole 1, 2, or 3. You know, the coach will tell it, and then he cuts into the hole, and like it's just a big collision in the center. It's just a very violent drill. But I'm gonna say that this event, if we did it right now, it's not even close. My brother works on Wall Street now. He doesn't work out as much. He used to be like a 240-pound strong safety, Division I football player.
He's still good at ping pong, though.
He is good at ping pong, but hey, we're not talking about ping pong right now.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think I got a little bit more. Got a little more beef, a little more. I got some Christmas hams. They fucking giving me the power and the glutes.
We may have to bring Mike in, to your other brother, to answer this question. He may have the most unbiased.
He would pick me for sure.
Okay. Are you guys going to come out with navy blue color for tactical line?
Already have it. So check out bornprimitive.com, or all the tactical stuff is also on bornprimitive.tactical.com. But yeah, we call it like the police blue colorway. It's a good navy.
Perfect. And last one. When are the Betsy Ross Savage 1s coming? And I think we teased this already. Can't wait to get a pair with the question.
I kind of don't want to tease it, but I guess this will be November 1st. It's dropping. We're really excited about this one. More to follow. I don't want to spill the beans, but I think this was what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about the kind of the sequel to the D-Day. And then following that launch, so November 1st, we will launch those 2 styles. On November 8th, we're going to be making an announcement that will be the biggest announcement and moment in our 11-year history as a company, in regards to us leveraging our platform to make an impact for the veteran community. For most of you know, November 11th is Veterans Day. So for 96 hours from the 8th to the 11th, we're going to do something, I think, pretty unprecedented. And I'm really excited about it. And again, that gets back to leveraging our platform to do some good. It doesn't have to always come in the form of us being vocal and cutting against the grain and, kind of calling out what we feel some bullshit. But hey, let's leverage our platform for some good stuff that is not controversial in any way, like supporting our military and first responder communities. And I'm proud to say I feel like that's a very bipartisan effort right now. I think people on both sides of the aisle are supportive of our troops and our, maybe not so much first responders, but it's very clear where we stand on that. And this will be, I think, my proudest moment in our country's history. So depending on when this airs, we might be very close to that, but just November 1, November 8th, mark your calendars, strap in. It's going to get a little wild.
Perfect. Well, for the listener, we'd love to hear kind of your feedback on these. Bear and I, we're going to try to kind of resurface doing these or the one-on-ones more. We had really good feedback, but then just candidly, like we had better kind of interest from guests coming on and have been able to book some bigger guests. So we kind of just rolled with having the guests on, and then had some people reach out about us doing more one-on-ones. So any and all feedback is welcome. If you love them, let us know. If you hate them, let us know. And we will kind of pick up the cadence on these moving forward. So any and all questions are welcome as well.
Heck yeah. Well, Tony, maybe next time I'll tone the caffeine down, but I feel like I was fairly well behaved.
Yeah. It was
somewhat.
It was good.
Well, not my best effort. A couple F-bombs. Got a little fired up.
I think it was baseline Bear.
Sorry, Mom. If you're listening, I'll try to do better.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, y'all. Have a good week. See ya.